Welcome back, dear listeners, to the Fright or Flight podcast, where we rank, recap, and review any movie in a given horror franchise. I'm Jumpscare Jared, the Fright of the podcast.
And I'm Frankie. I'm the Flight of the podcast, Gerald. And today we're here to talk about the eighth movie in the Texas Chainsaw franchise, Leatherface, directed by Julian Maury, Alexandre Bustillo, and written by Seth Sherwood.
Yeah, we are.
Now, interestingly enough, this movie didn't do too big of numbers at the box office. Apparently it only made $1.5 million at the box office. So it was definitely like kind of like a hit and release kind of thing. I don't think there was a lot of big promotional for this kind of thing. It's from 2017.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know about it, though, until we were planning to do this franchise. And I was going through all the movies, listing them in order, and I was like, wow, did not even know this one was released.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because, like, the space between the movies is, like, varies so much. Like, sometimes it's like, I mean, even between the first two, there's like a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
And so this one, the last one was released in 2013, so there's a 5-year gap, and I think it's another 5-year gap for the next one.
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, because 2013 to 2017.
No, for the next one.
And then for the next one, it's
2022.
2022.
Yeah, 22.
Yeah. Wow.
A lot of these movies, man.
Very sporadic.
Yeah, and, you know, we're sporadic people.
But, you know, this franchise in general is very sporadic because there's never a cohesive story.
There is not. And we keep trying to get there. I feel like, for me, the way I look at the movies, it's the original 4, then the 2 remakes.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have another set here of 2 remakes.
Yeah, another set.
Yeah, right. And it's kind of cool, though, if I'm being honest, because it feels like every generation gets their Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
You know, like, it doesn't matter when you're born. Probably in the decade when you're in your teens, there's a Texas Chainsaw movie out.
Which is exciting, I guess. But if you, like, follow along and you watch them all, I don't know. It's a hit or miss.
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw is a hit or miss franchise, if I'm being honest. But I am a large proponent of the belief that, like, when a new movie comes out, whether it's an adaptation of a previous a film that's already been made or whatever, even if it's bad, I never fault a movie for existing ever. Because I know a lot of people get upset, like, oh, they don't need to remake Lion King. They don't need to remake any of the Disney movies in live action.
Right.
Or, you know, I know, like, a lot of Tim Burton stuff is getting remade, like the Wednesday TV show. And there's
That's not a remake. That's just him creating a Wednesday TV show.
Right, but I think people get upset even just by new cast. They're like, Christina Ricci did it perfectly. Why would we don't need another Wednesday?
Right. However, if you watch it, Jenna Ortega killed the role.
I agree. And people are saying the same thing again with, like, the next Beetlejuice. And, like, we already have a perfect one. Why ruin it with a second one?
But it's a sequel.
But I don't disagree. I sequel, remake, prequel? I just never fault a movie for existing. Even if it's good or bad. Like, if it's bad, then just don't watch it.
Exactly.
It doesn't make the first one bad.
You make the choice. You don't have to watch it or listen to it or anything.
No, just let it exist. And so...
Be mad at it. But the thing that I can't stand is the people who hate watch.
Oh.
The people who are like, this is going to be awful. And they watch it anyway. I'm like, you're still giving them your money and your views. So, like...
So, yeah, joke's on you, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're still watching it, so...
That's right. Okay, so we kick it back to the 1950s this time for this movie.
1950s.
You know, previously we were in the 70s in the original movie. Now we're in the 50s. Beautiful time. I wasn't alive. I don't think you were either.
I was not. I wasn't even a thought until the end of the 1900s.
You know, when you say it like that, it's weird. You know, 1900s, like it's a...
I mean, but we're in the 2000. We're in the Roaring 20s.
Yeah, then the 21st century, huh?
Yes, and it's also reverting back. You know, history's repeating itself a little bit.
You think so?
I think so.
Well, happy times aren't upon us, I feel like. However, in the 1920s, you know, you felt like everything was like, wow, extravagant.
Yeah.
And now we have like AI and NFTs and all this, you know.
And, you know, the Supreme Court making terrible judgment calls. It's fine.
You're right.
But yeah, the 50s is where we were. My grandmother was alive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was born in 1947.
So she was very... So this movie takes place 55. She would have been 8 years old.
Yeah.
Must have been a different, you know, experience being 8 in the 50s than us in the 2000s, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure.
Well, we have Betty Hartman, and Ted Hardesty, and they're driving on a road of which we see often in Texas Chainsaw, like driving down a back road in Texas, and they come across like what appears to be a pig of some sort. They swerve away. It turns out it's not a hog; it's a tiny child, right? And he alarms the girl that's in there, Betty, and she starts chasing him while he's begging for help. You know what I mean?
Right.
In my head, obviously, this is a trap. We've seen Texas Chainsaw movies before.
Yeah. We be knowing.
Yeah, we really do. And you know what? Before we get to this, the movie actually doesn't open up on this.
The movie opens up on a family dinner scene, the infamous family dinner scene, but we're not led to believe that it's anything out of the ordinary. It just looks like a regular family dinner.
Yes.
But then the mom is like, she says something about like the thief, and then it like pans over to a person with like a not a gag, but I guess it's a gag, something in his mouth, and he's tied up to a chair.
Right.
And they're basically torturing this person for stealing a pig.
It looks like it's Jed's birthday.
Yeah.
And, so we get a Jed this time. We don't get a Thomas.
Yeah, they're continuing the story from Texas Chainsaw
3D, right.
The one that we just watched in the 2013 version.
That's right. And I think it's, an interesting interpretation because a lot of this movie is young Leatherface.
Yeah.
The movie made me think a lot about Young Sheldon. And it's instead of Sheldon, it's Leatherface.
Yeah.
So I think this is the most like different of all the Texas Chainsaws.
I mean, this is the most different out of all of them because it's a movie solely based on the experience and like the upbringing and the making of Leatherface. We know him, which is interesting. I'm not going to say it's great because it's not.
Well, we're going to have a different opinions because I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
It was okay for me. It was okay. It was okay. It wasn't a bad film.
Right.
It wasn't great. It's in the top half. It's a good movie.
It's another interpretation, this is another prequel movie. This one is technically tied to Texas Chainsaw 3D and to the original one. So all three of them are in one timeline for this. And we got a prequel previously, of course, in Texas Chainsaw the beginning. And it is the beginning, but this one is like even more origin story for Leatherface.
The only complaint is that the timelines still just don't add up. And there are some really big inconsistencies with the previous story in the 2013 one. So I'm a stickler for that stuff. And I know, I'm like, it's not that hard to make sure your plot points match up.
Right.
But then
what? This is connected to those movies, but I definitely wasn't aware of that for sure. Like while I was watching it, and I think it operates best independently from anything else.
It does.
In my opinion,
it does.
I often felt like I was watching it. If this movie feels very modern as far as like the cinematography and the storytelling, I feel like this should have been, instead of a movie, a Netflix television show. Yeah,
we're getting all of these like origin stories. People were making a lot of these movies based on a lot of these like big franchises in the horror industry. I mean, like we have a Chucky series that's going on right now. We're gonna get a Friday the 13th series. We're about to get a Conjuring series. I think they're gonna do one about Pennywise. I mean, so like, why wouldn't we have gotten a Leatherface one?
I feel like this could have done better as a TV series.
It probably would have.
It reminded me a lot of other television series, and I'll talk about it more as we go along, but there's parts of this movie that reminded me of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
There's part of these movies that reminded me of even Supernatural. Not in the sense of like themes, but like in just that we're following a group of kids in the wild and they have relationships with each other.
I agree 1000%. There's a lot of... you said American Horror Story, but I know that Ryan Murphy was behind the Netflix Ratched, about Nurse Ratched or whatever. So my brain goes to that a lot because that takes place in an asylum. And also I think of American Horror Story Asylum as well.
Yeah.
So like there are so many things like that I'm like, oh man, like it just makes me think of that. But
yeah, I think this would have been better at a TV show. But
I think so too. And I think it maybe would have been more successful that way too.
I agree because like you said, I don't think many people have heard about this film. And I think it's we disagree on how much we like it, but I definitely think it's good enough. Yeah. For it to have an audience.
It definitely is a hidden gem in the franchise because I didn't know about it.
Yeah, and it feels like the balance between like the ones that are better, the ones that are good, and the ones that are bad is swayed. I think there's more bad movies
Yeah, there are.
than good movies in the franchise.
I just want one that is like so good that I can't stand it, you know? And
Right.
I want one that's so overwhelmingly good that it takes the cake out of all of the movies that I'm like, I will never watch another Texas Chainsaw
Wow.
movie. I will watch this
The,
one now.
the first one I feel like is close to being perfect. It just has for me a 20-minute stretch where it isn't, and it's like it kind of boring and repetitive and not interesting. But it was the first one, so I mean, what it had going for it was so iconic that here we are 50 years later talking about 9 different iterations of that original film.
Yeah,
You know?
and I know it's hard to not be repetitive because there are so many things that were staples to the original that people want to implement in the movie. So it's really hard to not recycle material.
And I think that's a great segue because I feel like this movie did the best of like paying homage to the original. Like we get a dinner scene and Geraldine, I don't know if you know, but if you talk to other Texas Chainsaw fans, they get disappointed when they don't see a dinner scene. But
I don't
think these people are experiencing the movies like we are.
Yeah.
I think they fondly remember this stuff, but when you watch it over and over every week, you get tired of the stupid
like,
dinner scene.
Why?
But this movie, it didn't even click with me until like later on that that was an homage to the original.
Yeah.
Like because they kind of didn't make a big deal out of it. Yeah. And it was more about like Jed's birthday, and they give him a chainsaw, and they want Jed to kill this gentleman tied to the chair for being a thief, quote unquote.
Which is a really fun, like, I feel like that's a nice homage to the third one, because in this third film, they have that fancier chainsaw that they gift to Leatherface in that one. So that was really fun to kind of see that. There are like a little bit of nuggets that I noticed in this one.
I agree, yeah.
That I was like, okay, cool. And there's like even a list of ones that I didn't even catch that somebody else was like, oh, there are so many connections to the franchise in general.
Right.
That I was like, oh shit, I missed this. Like
That's
for
cool.
example, you said Ted Hardesty, and I didn't. It never even dawned on me. That's Sally and Franklin's like father.
Yeah. They like I said, like I think. Regardless of whether or not you like this movie, the creators of the film definitely cared about the franchise and did their homework. Yeah. To include, the variety of nuggets and hidden gems for everybody. So Jed has to kill this guy with a chainsaw, but this is what makes the movie kind of interesting. We play on something I think all the movies have like touched just slightly. This film is all about it. It's about Jed and Leatherface, whether or not his morality, his situation. Is he a victim? What is he?
Another thing that they also bring up in every movie, but this one I don't really feel like touches on, is mental disability. In a lot of the other movies, they will call him like really mean names, like the R word, and they will allude that like he's not all there, and he's quote unquote simple, which is still offensive and stuff. I don't really feel like we get that here. I think it's more like a moral dilemma. Like this is just what was his normal.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think instead of mental disability, we get more mental illness in this film, and a lot of that comes from trauma. I feel like in this one, and we get to see why he does what he does, the kind of family he grew up in, instead of thinking, oh yeah, considering the rest of the cast, he must have had an awful childhood. We actually get to see it firsthand personally here. And he has this moral conundrum where he doesn't want to kill this guy with the chainsaw.
Yeah, and he disappoints his family, and that's a big burden. As a kid, when your parents said, I'm disappointed in you, you may as well slap me in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh man, that was like a blow. I'm like,
yeah, and he doesn't feel good about it. And then this is another little homage to Grandpa, who's, we don't see, like, he's a lot more mobile in the 50s. He gets up and kills the gentleman that's strapped in the chair with a hammer, which that's what the first 3 Texas Chainsaw ones did, where the grandpa, he's the best killer.
And then they're like try to like force him to do it.
Yeah, so and this one you get to see him bonk him, and it's a quick, like, if you don't know, then it's whatever, but if you know, it's a nice little, reference.
Right, I agree.
And this is where we cut to Betty Hartman and Ted Hardesty driving down the road.
Right.
And when they swerve off because they thought they saw a pig, it's actually Jed. So he's still helping out. He maybe not able to contribute in the actual killing, but he, provides bait, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he is literally baiting them, bringing them to this area.
This barn.
Yeah, this barn, and the girl is like trying to talk to him, trying to find him. Of course, like, I mean, I assumed it as soon as she walked in. I was like, the whole family's probably in there. It's gonna be like a big like step kind of thing, but it wasn't. They had like a trap door, kind of like in part 2.
Right. Yeah.
With
When
Stretch.
Stretch falls through a trapdoor.
Yeah.
Constantly. They're just like hitting those references back to back. She falls through a trapdoor and eventually gets like this big car engine dropped on her, which kills her.
I know that it's a car engine, but my brain was like, it's a gen from
Oh my God.
Dead by Daylight. It kind of
That's
looks
so
like
funny.
it.
Yeah, it looks like a generator. Maybe that's what they are.
It was just kind of fun. I was like, man, I wonder if like Dead by Daylight was so heavily based from Texas Chainsaw versus any other franchise.
I think more than anything, like I'm not familiar with a lot of horror movies, but between the hooks, the lockers, the carrying on the shoulder, like there's just so many reference after reference.
Right. I mean, Leatherface is a big guy, and he's able to kind of throw people over his shoulder, that kind of thing. So it's really fun. I don't know.
Yeah, it really is. But unfortunately for the Sawyer family, a policeman shows up.
Yeah.
And he's there to, investigate what's going on. It turns out that the lady that was killed is his daughter.
Yeah.
And so we have Deputy Hartman.
So my problem here, starting off, is that it's a Hartman relation. So obviously there's a tie with the Burt Hartman.
Yes.
From the previous one. But I'm like, who is he in relation?
He is Betty's brother. So
okay.
So I think it kind of gives more explanation on why Burt wants to kill the Sawyer family, because ultimately they killed his sister and his dad.
Yeah, he's got family trauma there, family history, which I mean, again, makes sense a little bit if you know that. I mean, but that doesn't excuse it, like to kill a whole fucking family.
No, he definitely gets a lot from his dad. You can tell because Hartman at the first you feel bad for him. Personally, I felt bad that, his daughter just died.
Yeah.
But as the movie goes on, I think this event caused him to like break and just like be this vengeful thing. This
but he had it out because then later in the film we learned that he just has it out for those who are like the children who are struggling.
I think it's from this. I think this was the thing that made him that way.
I mean, I don't know. It could be, or maybe he was just like that anyway. Maybe he just was one of those people who was like, I don't like anyone who's different.
Yeah, yeah, it could be. Yeah, but anyway, he's here and he's threatening Verna's children. But
yeah, and that's another thing. I thought Verna was like, so Verna's the grandmother for Heather. And find out she's Edith Rose or whatever. And I'm like, cool, makes sense. But then they reference that Verna was either the mother or the aunt to Jed. Because of course they kind of make a reference that incest could have gone down because. But I'm like. I don't really know. Did they ever explicitly say what that relation was?
No.
Because I didn't know that there was like a specific, because to me, Drayton was the father.
Okay.
They specifically said that in that movie. They were like, we need your son. Send out your son. So I'm like, Drayton's the father, which would make Verna, if Verna's the mother of Drayton, she would have had to have been the grandmother to him as well.
I think it's a theme in Texas Chainsaw movies
the inconsistencies.
To be not inconsistent but vague. Like even in the original, I thought that like the hitchhiker and Leatherface were brothers, and that the cook was their dad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But apparently that's not the case.
Yeah, I guess not.
So I think they want to keep it kind of vague, and I think that does open it up for the whole like incest like. Country hick stereotype,
Yeah, I mean it's just confusing to me because like as a viewer, I have these preconceived notions because of the previous movies.
I never think about it. I'm gonna be honest. I never think like it doesn't matter to me like, oh, that's his uncle or brother or whatever.
To me, I feel like stories matter, especially because like, for example, again, I'm gonna use this reference again because I recently watched Orphan First Kill, and that movie is a prequel to the first movie that came out many years ago. I want to say it came out in like either a little bit before 2010 or somewhere in like the early 2010s.
Right.
I grew up watching that movie and I knew that story back and front. It's a good story, really good story. So because I knew that story so well, I was like, they're going to have to do something really, really cool to make this cohesive. And they did. And I was like, whoa, okay, I see what they did. And it all tied together perfectly, seamlessly. I love that shit. I eat that shit up for breakfast when people can do that. And when they don't, it's disappointing because then as a viewer, having watched it, and I'm like, okay, I know the story, but then again, I also didn't expect that they would go the same route with the Sawyer family. Yeah. Because it wasn't marketed that way, that they were linked together.
Yeah, I don't think you could tell.
And then like once they started doing that, I was like, okay, interesting. We're gonna go with the same storyline. But then when the inconsistency started happening, I'm like, okay, they've already kind of like lost me a little bit there.
But were you really, like you said, you appreciated the other franchise so much? Were you really expecting that from Texas Chainsaw?
I don't know. I mean, no, because we don't ever get like a cohesive story. We don't ever get like.
So I never expected going in,
but
so I'm not disappointed.
I don't think I had that expectation going in, but once they started using the recycled names, I'm like, okay, so this is connected.
Really? I just assumed okay, they're just using the same names.
No, I assumed it was connected at that point. So I'm like, okay, this is about Leatherface and his upbringing, so it's got to be connected to the previous one. What are they going to do with it? Because then they started using all of the same names, like Drayton and Verna, and I was like, okay. But then like. That's when things started like not adding up, and then I'm like,
I think I just don't have enough brain power to think of it while I'm watching it.
I'm always thinking, so my motors are always going, and I was like, they are already fucking this story up already. But I mean, I'm a little bit harsh that way sometimes.
Yeah, like you said, you're a stickler on the consistency.
I mean, I like it because I mean, it's like when you read a good book and then you read a sequel, you want it to pick up where it left off, kind of thing. Or at least have the same characters and the same motives, and I mean, you want the same thing to just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's where me and you differ. Where I feel like every time I watch a movie, I kind of judge it in its own bubble, and then the subsequent consistency, like between other films, is a little secondary, and that comes a lot to fruition with I watch a lot of the Marvel movies, and I have a friend that also watches them with me, and he's a super stickler for this. So when he starts talking about the movie and it keeps referencing all these other ones, I'm like, we watched this movie, you know what I mean? And he's why are you talking about all these other movies? But I understand. I know we're just different viewers.
I also get that though, because there's a whole timeline of like when the movie, like when you're supposed to kind of watch the movies, and when you watch them all in that order. And then these things happen and stuff. So then, like, you go in preparing for this movie after watching all of those, and then something doesn't add up. You're like,
I just don't think about it. But yeah, we're just different viewers.
I mean, I get that way because, like, it's also like when they do a book to movie adaptation. If it's not pretty on point, I'm pissed.
I'm total opposite. I want the movie to be different from the book.
No, I like it because like I visualized it in my brain as I've read it.
But it's never going to be that.
The only time that I was okay with them changing so much of it was with Coraline.
Right.
Because the book and movie, I mean, the book is small, so they have to make up for some things there. Wybie wasn't even a character. So they added him completely.
Yeah, I'm not like that at all. Like when I watch a movie, I never have an expectation for it to be like a book. They're two completely different mediums, and everybody imagines the book version completely differently. So like
my version's pretty on point. I don't know.
So I can't. Need to be in my head. Maybe one day with AI technology, Elon Musk is going to get that brain chip in your head, and he'll be able to give you what you want.
Disgusting.
We'll have our own
never
version.
mention that name again here. Ugh.
I got Mark on the fight between Elon and Zuckerberg.
Elon and Musk, as if they're two different people. He probably has,
clones out there,
Probably.
Yeah. Well, back to Texas Chainsaw. Hartman ends up taking away Verna's kids on the count of, she's not a good mother.
Neglect, which, true. But, I mean, she's not, like, neglecting them. She's there for them, but there's a fine line. There's a boundary.
Right.
I mean, she's literally, like, kill them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she is, like, enabling awful behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they seem to be safe, so...
They seem to be loved? I don't know.
Family, again, this gets brought up in the Texas Chainsaw movies. I think this one is also, like, family is important. And we get to see how it instills into Jed, into Leatherface in this movie. Because he, unlike his brothers, gets sent to the Gorman house, which is like a mental asylum. And this is the 50s. So like this is like we're barely just now realizing that like mental health and just physiology in general is a thing.
There was such a stigma then. Oh my God, if you had mental health issues, like
You're done for.
You're done for. You're locked
Yeah,
up.
I mean,
completely.
women, if your husband thinks you're being annoying, they could just send you off legally.
Which is like wild to me because like if my boyfriend,
You think he would have sent you off back then?
if that were normalized, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be off.
I would have been there immediately. But I mean, also mental health issues. I mean, there are also, if you have a history of it in your family, I think it also
There are
is
definitely a lot of
hereditary.
genetic ones. Yeah, schizophrenia is genetic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, Jed is of the age where this is where he gets sent to. And this is where we get, in my opinion, the crux of the movie. Because since this is a new program that's opening up here in Texas, a way to keep all the kids safe from their supposed abusive family members is that they are renamed.
They are renamed.
So Jed is in here inside this asylum, but it's never explicitly told until the end of the movie which one of these fellas Jed is. Now,
I will let you know now, that twist, I was a little disappointed.
I was slightly disappointed. I think that
Because the physicality of the other character that I thought it was the whole time, I was like, perfect. This is perfect.
I like the zag on this.
Yeah.
I like.
I mean, it
that
did throw me.
They did. Okay, so once they mentioned that, I anticipated a red herring. I anticipated them to do a plot twist, and
I didn't because I was like laying in my bed watching it like all sideways. I'm like,
I watched this one at work too, and I enjoyed it. I had a good
Stop
time.
watching things at work.
I feel like I had a better time than you did, and I was at work. But it kind of sets it up, and I feel like that was a very cool thing to do because you're right. We get this kid named Bud who. The movie is like almost begging you to think that this is Leatherface.
He literally has the physicality of what I would imagine the perfect Leatherface. Like he's
big,
tall, and he's big, and he's just got this like I don't know.
He's quiet. He doesn't talk a lot.
He doesn't say a lot at all, and not only that, but if we're referencing the previous films and the way that they reference Leatherface in general, his characterization is that he doesn't really know what he's doing, and like later we get to see him lobotomized and stuff and like zapped.
Yeah. They get like that electric therapy.
Yeah, which is so I'm like, okay, well that definitely had an impact on people back then. So like it
gives you all like the clues to think, okay, well this
literally leads you to believe Bud is him. Bud is Leatherface.
But spoiler alert. It's not him.
It is not.
It's this fella named Jackson.
I did not anticipate this at all. And I was like, what?
I really liked it. Like, I really, because I think, like, sure, you're right about the physicality. Mm-hmm. And the only reason we had Bud appear the way he did is for, the twist. But I don't think it affects the physicality at all. Like, you can look at pictures of, like, The Undertaker as a kid, and he was, like, this tiny little thing. And, when you get into your teens, that's when you have your growth spurt.
That's true. I mean, he was in his teens, at least to our knowledge. We don't really know how old we began the movie, but if he had a birthday, like, I imagine we start the movie and he's probably, like, I would say anywhere between, like, 7 and 10 years old is what I'm going to guess.
Well, 7 is the oldest he can be. Because he's only here because he's a child, and once they turn 18, they get booked out.
Oh, he was about to turn 18, so yeah, it's 10 years later because we get this like in the movie, like the bulk of the movie happens in like 1965, because it's like 10 years later, and they literally like okay, so if we start the movie in 1955, 10 years later, he's 17 years old. Makes sense because then you're still like you still haven't hit all of your adult. Spurts and stuff. So he could have still be like,
growing. I appreciated the twist. But anyway,
I did too.
We go through the asylum. This is a part that reminded me of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Because we're at an asylum, just like the second season, and
Love it.
we meet like kind of our protagonist in a weird way. We meet this nurse that we follow for a bit, and she's like brand new, and she's bright-eyed and hopeful of like wanting to do good,
wanting to save these people. She's a little naive in that sense because like there are some of these kids that probably could have been saved, but there are also some of them who were just from terrible, terrible upbringings. And obviously we get to see this play out, like probably like their worst day imaginable for the staff.
Yeah. This does end up happening because she gets in a lot more than what she, was bargaining for.
Oh yeah.
And we have this awful, we have this awful physician that works there.
Oh God,
I think his name's Dr. Lang, I think is his name.
Yeah, Dr. Lang.
And he is the one that, does this electrotherapy. He's the one that abuses these patients. And when Elizabeth...
There's also like this level of, I mean, I'm sure guilt, because it's like, what can she do?
Probably not much. One person versus a system,
Especially being a woman.
Yeah.
Like back in that day, back in that time. Like, I mean, people, it's hard enough now being a woman. People, like, you think people don't take you seriously now as a woman? Like, oh God, back then they were like...
What are you going to do?
They're like, you dumb bitch.
They
like,
treat you like crap.
Yeah.
Even more crap than
Oh
than
God,
now.
yeah.
Verna, shows up and she brings a lawyer telling him, hey, I want to see my kid. I have this, note from a judge. And
she married into the Carson family at this point as well.
Another little explanation. And the person, I guess, that runs this asylum, he doesn't want her to see him at all. So he's just like, oh, you know what? Their names have all been changed and you're going to need a whole different note. From the judge to see him or anything. And she gets upset by this, obviously. And instead of leaving, she sneaks off into where the patients are and basically starts a riot.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is like, their worst nightmare. Things are going crazy. All the inmates I say inmates, but all the patients start like, gathering, rioting, trying to escape. And this is where we like really get like our main four that we follow along.
We do meet Isaac earlier because he has an interaction, like a less than pleasant interaction with Bud, because he was like trying to be sexual and like with Elizabeth.
Right.
And then Bud steps in and tries to protect her. So he was in the right. Isaac was obviously in the wrong, but we've also heard Isaac be called Ike as well.
Yeah.
So then they both get sent to the ECT therapy, and that's when we find out they're being mistreated. Because Jackson also was kind of like, hey, if you really want to know what's going on here, like, go down there.
Yeah.
So then she goes down there, and she's not pleased by what she sees. But then we also hear, Jed
Yeah,
throughout
Verna's
the
trying to find
whole
him.
place. And everyone's, like, waking up out of a dead sleep. They're like, what? My thought process is there's no way Jackson didn't know this is Mom.
I don't know. I really don't know. But they do have him. I mean, they reference it later on, but he's on a bunch of medications.
Yeah.
And if you're getting electroshock therapy, I wouldn't be surprised at what you can forget.
Yeah, you're probably right. So then she causes this riot, and then it just creates like all of these safety protocols just go out the window, and these patients just start escaping and running together. And then we meet Clarice a little bit earlier as well, but Clarice...
Yeah, she was stuffing a mouse into somebody else's mouth.
Yeah.
And she is... apparently a lot of her... Like, the inspiration for her character was inspired by Chop Top.
Yeah.
Which, I see present. I think she is a great performer.
Great performer. She's also in Bridgerton, I believe.
Oh, what?
If I'm not mistaken. Let me double check myself here. She plays Clarice Mosley, so obviously that is also a very like fun little tidbit. Bill Mosley's last name, like Bill Mosley is the one who played Chop Top. But let me, if I can find, okay, Jessica Madsen is the actress's name. Bridgerton, yeah, she played Cressida Cowper. She was the one in the first season who the Duke and Daphne get caught kissing in the garden.
Yes.
And then she like sneakily sees them kissing.
Yeah. I think she does great in this role.
Yeah.
I think she's perfect. She plays like, like this just very
Unhinged.
intense. Unhinged is a great word for it. Yeah.
I just don't. It was such an unnecessary thing. We talk about it in every podcast. I feel like there was this, she was choking someone out, I guess, because of her boyfriend Ike, and she choked them using their hair, which was interesting. And then later she meets up with Ike in the hallway. Everyone's doing their escape thing, and they just start fucking.
Yeah, I think this is the most appropriate Like when we see like sex and nudity in these films, I feel like this movie portrays it for all the right reasons. Like usually I feel like it's just for like oh look everybody it's sexy, but this one I feel like it attaches to their characters and show like is more of an influence on unhinged and crazy they are.
I agree, because especially later when we get another like sex scene with them, I was like,
it's also horrifying. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
So I actually think of this movie like it's more justified than all the other ones.
Agreed, but I'm still like oh okay, just escape. What are you doing?
Well, they're crazy. They do eventually end up escaping, and they kind of take Jackson, Bud, and Elizabeth hostage.
Yeah.
And, you know, they get a car, they leave, and they go to, like, what appears to be, like, a rest stop, a little diner.
Barbecue place, which is fun.
Yeah, it's a barbecue place. You're right. And they cause a ruckus there.
This also... this reminds me of Dumb and Dumber for whatever reason.
Never seen it?
Get Out.
Okay, I'm leaving.
It's so funny. Dumb and Dumber is so funny. It's so stupid. So it just reminds me of that in a way, except for this is essentially the same thing, but with death.
A lot more violence.
A lot more violence.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of the opening sequence of Pulp Fiction.
Okay, yeah, I can
Quentin
see that.
Tarantino.
Yeah.
Bunny and whatever his name was.
Yeah, this scene was very violent. It's kind of like, you know, I think this movie operates in set pieces.
Yeah.
Where initially we got like, you know, the dinner scene, then the hospital scene, right? And then we have another violent scene here at the diner where they kind of cause a ruckus and are able to obtain their own weapons and practically kill everybody here at the diner.
We get a little bit of an interesting interaction between Jackson and Elizabeth because they're also sitting at a table. And you feel for this character. Like I liked this character in general, and especially not before knowing it was Jed, like Leatherface. I was like, man, he's like I really feel for this guy. I wonder what he's gone through.
Yeah. Well, he talks about like, hey, like I wish this was just normal. I wish we were just here like eating at a diner and we didn't have all this other stuff going on. And for briefly, you could take that as like a romantic gesture, but I didn't. I took it more as like he just wants to be a normal kid. Yeah. And it is taken away from him by his family.
Yeah, I mean that is what their normal is. And
and he doesn't like it.
And you know, you don't fuck with the family essentially.
And he's protective over Bud. I think ultimately Jackson is a gentle soul. Yeah. I really do think so.
So, I mean, it's really sad when you think of the trajectory of the character and then what he becomes.
It's tragic.
Because I think there's a level of innocence there.
Innocence. He's obviously empathetic. I mean, he not just protects Bud, but he looks out for Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. You know, unlike, you know, Ike is like the complete opposite. Right. Where like, because if I'm being honest, the whole movie I was kind of thinking... Oh, I could tell the naming convention thing of them changing the name immediately set me off. There's a red herring. It's not Bud. It's either Ike or Jackson. And I'm glad it was Jackson and not Ike. Ike would have been a horrible. I mean, he's just a crap guy.
Ike was so chaotic. Mm-hmm. And also, maybe
him and Clarice kind of had like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing, like going out in a hell of bullets. Mm-hmm. Kind of vibe where they're just on a rampage throughout Texas.
Literally, it was wild to watch. It gave me anxiety. I was like, what are they gonna do next?
Yeah, he in this diner got like a shotgun and for no reason killed an innocent. Like after all the altercation was done, they could have just left. Yeah. The waitress that was laying on the floor from being stabbed earlier
shoots her in the fucking face
with a shotgun, and the scene was very Evil Dead because we got a lot of this just volcano of blood coming out of her.
Yeah. Oh man, felt terrible for all those people there. Like they didn't deserve that. No. I think during this, one of the more innocent bystanders ends up shooting Bud in the side. Yes. And again, I'm like, man, I wonder how they're gonna transition Bud into Leatherface.
Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, I was kind of because I wasn't sure. I said like I felt like they were doing a red herring. But some movies do a twist on a twist.
Yeah. So they will have you, like, it's kind of like Scream. They'll have you thinking it's this person that seems so obvious, and you're like, that can't be that person because you're thinking it's somebody else, and then
it is. Yeah.
I hate that.
You don't like it?
I don't like a twist on a twist.
I just love mystery and like just.
I love a good whodunit, but I don't like that. I don't like a twist on a twist like that. Now.
What about if they do it a third time? Like a twist on a twist on a twist.
Keep the twist coming then yeah, because then I'm like, whoa, shit, and then another one, I'm like, what? Like, then my reaction.
Because that's what, like, M. Night Shyamalan, apparently, like, that's his whole thing, that there's a twist. I've only ever seen, I think, one movie from M. Night Shyamalan. I've never seen...
the only one I've seen was Split.
Yeah, I've never seen The Sixth Sense.
Oh, actually, no, I've seen that one. That one's amazing.
I've never seen The Mist.
We'll have to watch that. We have to add that to our list.
M. Night Shyamalan movies?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've only seen one, but I can't think of the one I've seen.
There's also, like, I think, oh yeah, you said The Mist. There's
one about trees. Everybody's like committing suicide for.
Was it Signs or was it like The Village or something?
I don't know. There's a really recent one about like something about a beach and you age at the beach.
Yes, I think it's called Old Age or something. Or
I think it's just called Old.
I think it is called Old. I haven't watched it. I added it to my list. My mom said it was pretty okay.
Okay. We'll eventually get around to some M. Night Shyamalan movies. But yeah, they exit this diner and they end up in the woods. They find kind of like a mobile home that's been abandoned, and they kind of like camp there.
I literally knew that either someone was gonna be there, or there was gonna be someone dead already. I knew something like that was gonna happen. I did not expect it to show this way, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it kind of. This is something like it's just randomly there. Like we don't really get an explanation for there being like a dead body here.
I think it was implied that it was the taking of their own life. Like a suicide.
Oh, because he said died of loneliness. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it looked like they were in the bathtub. And
yeah,
it looked
they were in the bathtub.
And it looked like there was something with like a belt and like the towel rack behind them. But
I didn't catch that.
I could be wrong.
But this is where we get that scene that you were talking about earlier where Ike and Clarice start having relations with each other and they involve this carcass. And Clarice, like, makes out with this while she's getting it doggy style.
Literally, stuff like that makes me physically ill watching it.
And it's another homage. I think this went like a million times harder, but it's like the original where they had the grandpa kiss Sally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or no, was it a kiss or was it a finger? It was a finger, wasn't it? That he put in her mouth, and that she put in his mouth.
Yeah. They forced that. But,
yeah, it's intense. We also see like a lot of markings on Clarice's body,
like burns.
I think it's burns. Yeah, that also doesn't. I don't think it's an explanation, but it is interesting. You know, it shows that there's background there.
Yeah.
Elizabeth tries to escape, in the dead of the night, and she gets caught by Isaac, and Isaac starts kind of groping her, harassing her. He obviously has some intentions that gets interrupted by Jackson. Jackson wakes up and he starts, defending her.
Yeah.
And there's an altercation. Clarice keeps on saying, let's just kill her. Let's just kill her. But Isaac's like, no, we got a plan. We're going to Mexico and then we'll split our ways. But Bud gets really upset because...
This is why they really had me believing.
Yeah, they really push
Leatherface.
It. Because Bud, he gets called... I forgot what exactly he gets called, but Isaac says some mean things to Bud. And
he
it didn't sit well with him.
Something about like him... Like he shouldn't have been born.
Yeah, like why did God even bother making you or something like that?
Yeah, like really just terrible things.
Awful things to say.
You wouldn't say to anybody.
Right. Bud doesn't like it. He hits him over the head with what appears to be a log and then drags him out to the middle of the woods and curb stomps his face on a rock, which looks like an awful way to go.
Yeah. And then he just ends up laying there.
He falls asleep right there. And then so the next morning, Clarice, Jackson, and Elizabeth go out looking for Isaac. Clarice kind of splits off, and she gets found by an officer, like a secondary officer that we met earlier on. I forget his name, but this officer seems to be a little gentler than Hartman, at least originally when we first meet him. He's like, "Whoa, Hartman, you're being a little too harsh." Because when she comes over, he starts like he pistol whips Clarice and starts like torturing her, like shoving his thumb into her wound. Meanwhile, Jackson and Elizabeth find Bud and they kind of hide in a corner. Now, Clarice is being antagonized by Hartman. They think that everybody else is inside the trailer. They shoot the trailer a million times. In this altercation, he shoots Clarice in the head.
He straight up shoots her in the head because she's like laughing though throughout this whole thing, which is also just a testament to how like unhinged her character is.
Yeah, she laughs a lot.
Yeah.
Even though all the stuff is going on. Her last straw was that she mentioned his daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And that set him off. And then he shot her in the head. You know, Elizabeth kind of struggles with like, oh, the police are here. This is good.
Yeah. But for people who, well, one, they escaped an asylum. Two, people with any kind of mental health issues or anything like that, like, it's not taken as seriously, I guess, or not. There's not a level of gentle compassion there that there should be.
You're right.
Even to this day, they still struggle with people like have mental crises.
Exactly, yeah. And so like if that's today in the 1950s, I mean,
yeah,
even worse. But so Bud and Jackson are kind of trying to convince her, like, no, they're bad news. Not just the cops, but especially Hartman.
Yeah.
He's the one that put them all there. So this is where, you know, we get the plot twist, because as they're running away, Elizabeth kind of scurries off, gets the attention of an officer. And while they go up the hill, Bud, you know, turns to this cop, starts running towards him. He gets shot in the shoulder, and then through an altercation with the officer shoots Bud in the head.
Yeah.
So this is like the twist. Like, this is like, oh my gosh, the person I thought was Leatherface just died.
So my brain was still trying to rationalize. I was like, I guess that would make sense, maybe, with the characterization of Leatherface.
You were still thinking it was Bud. Wow, you were so set on that. I was expecting this the whole movie. I was waiting for Bud to die. Because, like, the whole naming thing, I was like, Bud's going to be the red herring. He's going to die at some point. My only problem with it isn't the actual doing of it. I just wish it was more dramatic. I just wish it was... Because you kind of get Jackson yelling, no! And you get to see his aftermath of being upset that Bud is dead. But I wish that moment was in slow motion or something to be like, yeah, that's right. The person you thought was Leatherface isn't Leatherface. So I like the twist. I just wish it was a little more theatrical and cinematic.
Yeah.
Jackson, you know, gets really upset by this and ends up like smashing this officer's face again between the car and the car door. Elizabeth gets in the car and they start driving away from the police, from Hartman specifically, when he gets shot straight through the mouth. And this is what causes the scarring and like his facial problem, which I gotta say, I like this more than the 2003 remake. The skin disease. It's just, I don't know why. I think this is a little more interesting to me personally.
Yeah.
Than a skin disease.
Almost kind of like a Batman, like the Joker.
Yeah, he kind of has
like the Heath Ledger Joker.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they end up getting into a car accident.
Yeah.
They flip over. And Elizabeth and Jackson are taken. It looks back to that barn, doesn't it? Like that's where his daughter, Hartman's daughter, originally died. And Verna shows up. You know, she has her own shotgun because she was alerted by the other officer we met earlier, who wasn't doing all this out of the kindness of his heart. Apparently, they agreed on some monetary exchange for information on where Jet is.
Yeah.
But when he came to collect on it, they turned their back on him, killed him, and fed him to their pigs.
Terrible. And
it looks like these pigs are, in general, they're like not cannibal, but they're human eating pigs.
Yeah, they eat like whatever meat they give them.
Yeah, they've been, they have a taste for human.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that's pigs in general. They'll eat whatever you give them.
Really?
There was this terrible, like actual story that happened where there was like abuse going on in the home with this family, and they malnourished their child. And they malnourished their pigs on purpose. Okay. And fucking fed the kid to the pigs.
Christ, was this recent?
I don't know how recent it is. It was really horrible when I read it. Like, it literally made me sick.
That's awful.
For days thinking about it. And I never forgot it. It never left me because I thought it was just so horrible. Because those are horror stories, like real life horror stories that you hear about with like step parents, and you know.
Yeah, and you hear that stuff happens, like parents who keep their children like malnourished on purpose and like keep them like chained up to like their bedroom or something like that.
I just cannot imagine doing that to anybody,
especially a child. Children are innocent.
Yeah, but like anybody in general, like, or even animals, like that's just horrible. But so I don't know, but I mean, at least that it happened at least I want to say it was in the last 10 years or something, but I never forgot it because when I read it, it stuck with me and it literally made me so sad. Like I cried for days reading about that. It was horrible.
I mean, it's awful.
It's a horrifying image
it
to
makes you
have.
think like mankind and don't deserve to be here because we can be so awful to each other.
Yeah, but I would much rather talk about fictional deaths though. So yeah, this officer gets fed to the pigs.
Yeah.
And he doesn't deserve that at all either.
No, because ultimately he is like, he's not doing good for a good reason for money, but ultimately Hartman is like doing awful things to these children, sending them to an awful place.
Right.
So Jedediah probably is better off with Verna than he is at the asylum.
Yeah, but I mean, at least in the asylum, like he was, being medicated and stuff, and I don't know, but there was still abuse there. So I mean, it's really.
And apparently, he was going to get sent to prison.
Once he turned 18. So I've heard that jail is in prison. Like some people do things to go back.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's just jail. The American prison system is awful, and oftentimes people that go into prison for petty crimes, they leave and end up doing things they wouldn't have if they ever went to prison. I think the American system is very focused on punishment as opposed to rehabilitation.
Agreed.
And I think that's more important. And some of the people who get used to the life in prison have a harder time in regular society. Because prison doesn't really do anything to prep you to go back into the world. I don't know if you know, but when you go to prison, you still have to pay for all the stuff that you use. Like your meals, when you leave, they bill you.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that's at least I've seen depicted in television shows. People have to ask their family to send the money.
Yeah,
while you're in there.
And it's just in general, it's an awful experience. And when you're used to something for so long, it just some people end up wanting to go back, but they make it hard enough on you as a felon to live in the regular world after. Because it's easy enough for us. I mean, it's still awful, but for a former felon, it's even worse because now they can't get certain apartments, they can't get certain jobs. So it's I'm down on my luck. I don't have a roof over my head or food. Prison looks like my only option.
I think specifically, if the crimes involved children, and sexual assault. I don't know. My brain's I feel that it should be hard for them to get apartments and especially places that they'd be tempted to do things again.
Sure.
But jobs, I feel people need to work.
Or in general, there needs to be
rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation because if you take let's say a predator, and all you do is punishment and make them resent the system, they're more likely to get out and do it again instead of trying to genuinely help and fix them. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for the potential victims in the future. You don't want that to happen.
Right.
So you want to give this person therapy and help them.
Everybody needs therapy. Let's be honest.
Problem.
Everybody needs therapy. I will die on that hill.
It should be free.
It should be free.
Especially for kids.
Oh my God, yes. Literally, that is my goal in life whenever my partner and I begin our family, to just engage in couples therapy to make it a normal thing, because you don't have to go if something's wrong. It's just good because people have different communication styles.
That's right.
And it's just so good for stuff like that. And also because it helps you whenever you want to build that family later, because we all have trauma and we all have things that happened to us as children that our parents.
We could all use a little help.
We could all use a little bit of help. And, things that could be unlearned that you wouldn't want to pass on to a child.
Exactly.
Much like killing,
Yeah, this runs in the Sawyer family. And, Jedediah was so close to breaking that.
He was.
He was so close because he's not like the other ones. His brothers get so much joy and laughter from doing this. And Jedediah, from the beginning, had that, dilemma inside himself where he's he doesn't want to do these things. He says in the diner, he just wants to be normal.
Which is so freaking sad.
It's sad.
It's such a letdown.
He gets pushed to this being Leatherface. And that's why I kind of you mentioned earlier, mental disability. I like this tragic thing instead of he had the chance as opposed to he's getting taken advantage of in both situations. Mm-hmm. But the other one is a little more it's neater. It's not as like complicated.
Yeah.
It's a little like, oh yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's also, I feel like that one's like also even more sad as well because, you know, like mentally challenged people like get taken advantage of.
That's right.
In general in society, in our system. And it's hard for them to live in general as well because of the way that our like society treats them, the setup as well, and the stigma that people have. So I mean, that story makes it even more, and it makes it harder to digest because it's like it's so fucked up as a story.
It is, and it's true. Like it happens. Like this is on the opposite side of the table. It is young, but even like old people in like nursing home get taken advantage of. Like they get treated awfully in a lot of these nursing homes.
Yeah,
because nobody is there to like monitor, to keep around. So there's a lot of like just evil and negativity in this world, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in. But like with mental health things too, it's like people. I mean, it's all. People have like the opportunities presented sometimes for change to happen, but we typically go with what's familiar. Change is not comfortable for anybody.
It's not.
So
and I mean, I've been the same way too.
But also like, again, there's like this strong like family tie. So I also understand that dilemma being like, you have like this burden of performing for your family because who else is going to do it for you?
Especially when it's like reinforced over and over that like they're right because everybody else ends up stabbing you in the back or betraying you or not being what you expect them to be.
So, I mean, like
especially when you're hopeful. You know, you're putting yourself out there and it just never goes right.
And this scene in particular, these final scenes were really like, I don't know, shocking and crazy to me because not only like Jed gets free somehow.
Verna shows up. And she has a standoff with Hartman. Hartman goes down, and he and Elizabeth are taken back to the Sawyer house.
Yeah.
There, Hartman pleads with Elizabeth to help him untie him and get out.
Yeah.
She does it, but they never make it out of the house. They get caught. And then Hartman is tied up to the couch. Just there's a full circle kind of thing, just like the beginning of the movie. Jedediah is kind of like stitched up by his mother. You get to see like his face being put back together, and
this was a really cool scene as well.
Yeah, like you know, in the last one we saw him like stitching his mask through his face. This one we actually get to see his face stitched together, and the reason he has that initial mask is to like hold everything in place. And she's not a doctor, so this doesn't look like the cleanest job. like this is why his he wears the mask because he has all this facial damage that was done during these events.
Right. And I mean, and that would make anyone insecure, I imagine. So, which is another reason why he ends up making his own mask out of Elizabeth's face once he cuts her head off.
Right. Because that's what happens. You know, she gets, this is a first circle moment where like he gets the opportunity again to kill Hartman with a chainsaw. And he's filled with rage and he does it.
Yeah.
You know, Hartman is gone. And then Elizabeth gets up and runs out into the woods. She gets trapped by a bear trap and she's confronted with Jackson and his mom Verna.
And he was she's pleading with him and she's like, I really want to help you.
It's not over yet. Like there's still a chance. I know there's good in you.
And like, but he has like made it known from the beginning that he has trouble trusting people. So naturally, because of this betrayal of them trying to escape and his family talking in his ear, planting those little bugs in his head, rightfully so, he doubts her capability of being truthful. And what really
sets him off is that she said, don't listen to her. She's a crazy bitch. She's crazy. And that's it. Like, she didn't even get to finish the second one.
Yeah.
Because he picks his chainsaw up and just slices.
Essentially, he's like, you don't talk about my mama that way. Yeah. And he cuts her head off.
Yeah. Stupid thing to say. She shouldn't have said that.
She shouldn't have.
No, because that's what really set him off.
Yeah, because I mean, his family to him is everything.
She's awful, but she's the one that helped him. She's the one that fixed him. She's the one that nurtures him. Like, even when he couldn't do it at the beginning of the movie, she held him and said, it's okay.
And she's like, you did good, Jed.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, so then she's also encouraging.
Yeah, she's encouraging, enabling. And yeah, so like our protagonist from earlier on is dead. And this is it. The movie ends with Jed in his basement making that mask out of Elizabeth's face and putting some makeup on.
Putting some lipstick on, and then he stares at himself. And of course, this looks nothing like the Pretty Woman mask that we get in the previous films, which is a little disappointing, but it's fine. But then he gets mad and like punches or stabs like the mirror, and then that's the end.
Yeah. Like I said, I think this movie is like a modern adaptation. I personally really enjoyed this one. I think this is the best made movie. Like, despite of whether or not you like it, I think every component of the filming crew was firing at all cylinders, from the direction, the writers implementing all these Easter eggs in the movie, all these
it's fun.
Homages and references. I felt like all of the actors' performances were great. I feel like the performance of Leatherface in every movie is hit or miss.
Yeah.
This one, we get another one where we don't have a second antagonist really like we do. I guess Hartman is kind of that character. And like in Texas 3D, like we kind of root for Leatherface in this one.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like rooting for Leatherface.
It's a fun dynamic. It's a different kind of story that we get because we don't typically get to do that.
Yeah, like I said, this one was very much for me like Young Sheldon, except it's Young Leatherface.
Yeah.
So, Geraldine, I think it's time for us to rank it. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. So, my current ranking as it stands from best to worst is The Beginning, the original 1974 film in second, Texas Chainsaw 3D in third, the 2003 remake in fourth, fifth, I have Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, sixth, I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and last place in seventh, The Next Generation. That's the one I like the least.
Interesting.
Now I'm going to put this one in my ranking stand.
Okay.
Now, I know when I watched this movie, you'd be surprised by where I put it. I don't know if you have any anticipation of where you think I might put it. But
knowing you is going to either throw me for a loop or it's going to be so shocking that I'm like, what? So I don't know.
Leatherface, 2017's Leatherface, is my number one Texas Chainsaw movie.
I fucking knew it.
It's the first place one. I think it's the best made one. It's the most entertaining movie. Not only do I think it's a good Texas Chainsaw movie, I mean, obviously I think it's the best Texas Chainsaw movie, but I think it's a good film, like outside of horror. I just think it's a well-made a craft of film. And I feel like out of all of them, I can't really like besides like the consistency that you said, I can't think of a thing to fault it for. I feel like the writing and the pacing of the filming
was very good.
Was just entertaining throughout. So it was a little hard for me to put it on top of, because my first question is it better than the original? I think so, because like I said, the original has a 20-minute stretch where I'm just like a little bored of it. And I think it's a better film than The Beginning, just because, well, I think The Beginning plays with a lot of like just awesome things. I think narratively there is a lot in that movie that like has its faults. And like, well, I think Hoyt is like, wow, like a monster.
Yeah.
Like it's a Hoyt movie more than it is a Leatherface movie.
Understandable.
And I feel like this one we do get Leatherface, and we get the most personality out of all the characters. Like, we really know who Isaac, Clarice, Bud, and Jackson are in this movie. I feel like we like follow them throughout the whole thing. So for that reason, this movie, Leatherface 2017, is my number one favorite Texas Chainsaw movie.
Interesting. Okay. So it's your number one. For me, it's not the worst one I've ever seen at all.
Okay.
Not by any stretch. Because the worst one I've seen still takes the cake as part two.
You know, people love that one.
That's so fucking
A lot of people
to me.
put that as their second favorite after the original.
They are lying to themselves. They're straight up lying, dude.
It's definitely bottom for me.
Bottom. Like, bottom of the barrel. I'm like, what did I just watch? This fever dream.
People, I heard somebody talk about this movie, and they said like they thought that like Elizabeth was fine, or they had her as a final girl from the last one, but then the best final girl out of all of them is Stretch.
No, they are literally lying to themselves because Stretch fucking sucks.
People have their opinions.
Oh man. Anyway, all right, I digress. So my current rankings stand best to worst. The original 1974, second place the like Texas Chainsaw at the beginning, third place the 2003 remake, fourth place 3D. In fifth place, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3. In 6th place, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. And then in 7th place, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. I think my placement, okay, so it partly has to do with the connectivity to the characters. There is way more personality, a lot of different dynamics happening here. First of all, the woman who plays Verna, Lily Taylor, is a fantastic actress. She's been in so many horror films and just really good films in general.
I think her performance is the best out of all the motherly characters.
1000%. She is amazing. I love her. She's in The Conjuring. She's in The Haunting. Like, she's in so many different things. 13 Ghosts as well. Just really, really good character. But I don't know, we could just get to know these people more. They throw you for a loop. You feel this depth of sadness that we haven't felt before, where it's a real internal struggle, what to do, where to go. Like, he has this opportunity to run away, but then he also chooses his family over everything. This is so tough for me. I think I'm going to put it 3rd place. So
I like that placement for you.
So it's going to be over to the 2003 remake.
Right.
That's hard for me.
Okay, so when we first got to the 2003 remake, I was very happy because we just got through 3, what I think, horrible films.
Yes.
So 2003 remake was like, oh wow, it's interesting now. And the beginning to me is just a much better version of the 2003 remake. It's like everything that I didn't like from that one, they improved on, and they just made a better version of that movie. So I like that placement for you, 3rd best overall. So 3 out of 8 now is your ranking for that film, and obviously it's my number 1 out of 8.
I'm a little nervous to see what they do for the 2022.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw.
To briefly say my expectation, it's very low. My expectations are very low just because I will
let you know. The guy who did this movie, I think it's
2017 or 2022.
The 2022. The guy who did that movie, he did Don't Breathe, and he also did the 2013 Evil Dead remake.
The 2013 Evil Dead?
It's Fede, Fede Alvarez or Alvarico, however.
Yeah.
He's responsible for the 2022.
Okay, so we'll have to see. This is the second film we see.
He did very good with,
right.
Don't Breathe. That movie I was on the edge of my seat.
Okay.
Watching that movie. And then, the 2013 remake of Evil Dead is also very good.
I think, this one, we both ranked it high. I think was a very pleasant surprise, the 2017 Leatherface.
Yeah, I had 0 expectations going in.
It's awful that it shares a name with the 1995 Matthew McConaughey film. I definitely think this is a better Leatherface of the two. But since it was like a nice surprise, I feel like we've been getting decent enough movies that I feel like it's time to slope off, and the next one's probably not so good.
Well, I've not heard horrible things. I've just heard horrible things as far as the characterizations of the people, the actual characters. Like, for example, like I said, a lot of people said that they were very woke as a relation to our society now, which is really annoying because people throw that around like it's an insult. Because I'm like,
I think it's funny.
I mean, it is funny, I guess, in that way. But I mean, these people are probably just like emotionally aware and intelligent or something, and people hate that for you, I guess. Like,
yeah.
So
this is so off topic, but Jason Aldean.
Oh my God, I don't even want to talk about it.
Just released a song that people are upset about.
It's awful.
Well, he's finally attacking the woke mob, who needs to be taken down. But yeah, what you gonna do?
I mean, I don't give a shit one way or the other. Like, first of all, Jason Aldean sucks. His wife sucks. I don't care. I'm not gonna listen to their music.
Right. The woke thing is just funny to me because I feel like now a lot of these, there's just a bunch of words that are thrown out that don't mean anything.
They don't mean anything.
That are insults or
like when people are throwing around the word snowflake.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
Or just like the like my pronouns are USA.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like, because being anti-pronoun. Like, that's just, we
use pronouns every day in our life.
But I like it. It doesn't make me like mad or anything. I think
it
it's
also
funny.
just lets people know that you are respectful. That's it. Takes 2 seconds to be like, she, her. That's it.
Yeah, that's really it. But we'll talk about this more next week.
Yeah,
when we do
but I have heard pleasantly that the kills are brutal, so I'm excited.
Yeah, this one it wasn't super brutal. I think this one, its strengths are the writing as opposed to like the gore. Where I feel like the beginning has more like intense gore, I feel like.
I like both. If I can get both
in one thing,
in one movie, that's going to be a good movie.
Yeah, right. You're right.
I mean, I'm excited. I need more Texas Chainsaw from anybody.
Great one.
I need somebody to make the best Texas Chainsaw movie I've ever seen in my life. I need like Leatherface to be big, bad, scary, everything in between, but I need to have that level of sympathy for him, the good storytelling. Yeah. I need to connect to the characters. I want to cry again. Make me cry. Make it so sad when that character dies that I fucking cry. And then 2, I want the deaths to be brutal on top of that with the cohesive writing.
Yeah.
Is that so hard?
Well, maybe you need to be the one. Maybe you need to be the one to make it, you know?
Maybe, you know, I know several people who have the stature and the build that they could do a solid Leatherface. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, there we go.
So maybe it'll be me, and you guys will be watching my movie, and then you'll be making podcasts about it, and then maybe I'll be sad if I listen to it because it'll be like bad reviews, like what the fuck was this bitch thinking?
The way you talk about TCM 2, part 2, they'll be talking about yours.
They'll talk about mine. They're like, they'll be like, Stretch. So dumb, but like about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is this Geraldine girl?
Yeah. Ugh. Well, all right, guys. We'll see you next week. Thank you for catching us. Follow us at FrightFlightPod on everything. Shoot us an email at
frightorflightpod@gmail.com.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Fright or Flight, a Live Oaks Village production. This episode was hosted by Geraldine Johnson and Saul Alberto Arizmendi Ochoa, edited by me, Bailey B., and music composition by Saul Alberto Arizmendi Ochoa.